And on the phone with us, we have our Congressman Bryan Steil, who has recently co-sponsored H.R. 2149, which is a bill aimed at cutting off the funding for human trafficking. Bryan, are you on the line with us?
I'm on. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being on, Congressman. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well this evening. How are you guys?
Good. How's the weather out there in the Beltway? Is it better than it is back here in Kenosha?
I just got in back to work tomorrow. I'm home every weekend. So I was home, enjoyed what was a beautiful Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then back here to kick off the week. And so rainy out here, but it's always better back in Wisconsin.
Well, of course it is. Of course it is. Tell us a little bit about this H.R. 2149 and how it is going to really have an impact on the human trafficking, I'm going to call it an epidemic that's going on not just in the world, or not just in our country, but definitely in the entire world.
Well, so as I took office, I spent a lot of time trying to travel around southeast Wisconsin, talking to people about, what are the issues that we're seeing day in and day out. And I've heard time and again, and you know this, but is the epidemic that is human trafficking. You talk to Sheriff Beth, you talk to law enforcement across southeast Wisconsin, you hear it time and again. As I said, all right, where is there an area where we can sit down and work together, Democrats and Republicans coming together to address this? And what this bill does in particular is it holds countries accountable as it relates to illicit financing. And so some pieces,
So is this like a Patriot? Is this like a Patriot Act for human trafficking? Almost? Would you say that's a good way to explain it?
You're kind of heading in that direction, right? So we need to know when countries that apply for foreign aid that they're standing with the United States as we try to go after those that are profiting off of this human trafficking. And so we do that as it relates to kind of the war on terror that countries are standing with the United States. We do that as it relates to drugs. We need to be doing that as it relates to the illicit financing of human trafficking, that countries are doing their part to prevent these large international criminal gangs from actually profiting off of the trafficking of persons.
Now, have your advisors that obviously help you when you're writing these bills, have they pointed to any examples of specific criminal enterprises or specific countries that they think we can have an immediate impact on if this bill is implemented?
Well, what this bill is going to do is it's going to bring everybody to the table and say, what are you doing? And so we have our suspicions as to where the problems are, but this is going to say, if you want U.S. foreign aid, we want to know what you're doing to clip out that international funding and the financing where people are actually profiting. My view is always, if you go after the money, you're actually going to get to the root cause of the problem.
I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe the flip side is true. If you follow the money, you'll find the genesis of just about any problem in our society. What impact do you think this legislation will have specifically in southeastern Wisconsin and our local efforts here, such as Carrie Hemming has been talking about here, as far as targeting and combating and reducing and hopefully eventually eliminating human trafficking?
Well, so as you know, the human trafficking is a big umbrella where there's lots of things that fall under it. Sometimes, it's a local girl or woman, who's in high school, maybe in Kenosha, who gets pulled into it. Sometimes it's these large international criminal gangs that are actually going and recruiting from low-income countries and then taking those individuals and bringing them into our communities. It was only a couple of weeks ago that the U.S. attorney located in Milwaukee indicted a criminal gang that was trafficking individuals that were farm laborers up in Racine County. Yeah. So we're seeing it right here in our home areas. And this bill goes after, one piece of the broader puzzle, which is the international money laundering piece of it. But we all need to do our part. I mean, it's got to be, sometimes it's your high school counselor maybe or your high school teacher. Sometimes it's local law enforcement where it crosses state borders. Sometimes it's the FBI. And then where it's these international organizations, we need to go after them, from a national perspective and try to really restrict their money. But all of us working together can have a real impact.
That's fantastic. Carrie, do you have any questions for Congressman Steil or Vic? Do you have anything you want to add, comment, ask?
Well, I did want to say thank you, Congressman Steil, for bringing this subject up and creating a national conversation yet again on it. You know, human trafficking is a $150 billion industry, and it's the fastest rising criminal industry in the world. So I'm very excited and pleased to see that it's becoming a national conversation again. And I absolutely agree that you follow the money and you find the crime.
You're right. You follow the money, you get the crime, and I think there's a real importance of raising our awareness of this issue across the board. That awareness can also help us root some of this out where it might be occurring right in our communities, and if we aren't aware, we might not see it and be able to intervene.
Well, that sounds like pretty good local support here from the Racine Police Department. How has the local reception been to the bill otherwise?
You know, we've had a great response. You look at the Wisconsin delegation from Gwen Moore and Mark Pocan, Democrats, to Jim Sensenbrenner or Sean Duffy, Republicans. The entire Wisconsin delegation has signed on to this bill. I've been working on this kind of day in and day out, and I talk to my colleagues, and we're now up to 30 co-sponsors. We're going to continue to work and to add into the total number of co-sponsors with the goal of getting this put into law, as quickly as we can.
What do you anticipate the time frame is for this getting to the president's desk?
Well, it's going to be a matter of hard work, and so my kind of step one is to continue to build up the co-sponsors to this.
What are the hurdles? Who's against cutting off the financing for human trafficking? That's what I'd like to know.
Probably the biggest hurdle is getting everyone's attention to the problem. Before people sign on to a bill, they want to read it, they want to learn about it. And so that takes my time and effort, and that's what I enjoy doing, is going around talking to my colleagues about this.
Well, maybe they can take a break from investigating Russian collusion and get to some real problems. That would be kind of cool. Do you have any other plans or other legislation in the future that you plan on introducing on this issue?
So I'm always looking at opportunities where we can be impactful. One of the things that I've been looking at right now is Congress goes through the process of setting out our spending for the years ahead. Are we properly funding some of this ability to go after human trafficking? And so I'm looking into that right now, and that's probably maybe the next step is to make sure that we're properly funding our law enforcement community to be able to go after this problem.
Well, thank you. I want to say, first of all, I just want to give you a pat on the back for making the very first bill that you sponsor as a freshman congressman something as important to our society as this. Instead of jumping onto something that might be, a little more sexy or a little more political, and I know that it's not getting points in the beginning because so few people are aware of this problem, and that's why I'm working very hard with great folks like Carrie, with Vic, with Betsy Aid, who is our local celebrity recently, who've all agreed to really help not only raise awareness but raise money. We're going to be doing a all-day music festival on September 28th that is actually going to support a group called Operation Underground Railroad. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tim Ballard and his organization, but he was a former DHS agent, and prior to the DHS being formed was an FBI agent, and he quit his job when he realized that he wasn't able to do enough and started this organization that actually goes in with armed jump teams and rescues children that have been trafficked in foreign countries where the consumer, unfortunately for these children, are American men. And so I'm trying to bring as much attention to this repulsive practice all the way around as possible. And for you to jump in and make this your first bill, I just gotta, I gotta applaud you. I can't think of a better way to make a positive impact on the world in a time when everybody is demagoguing every issue and looking to score political points instead of actually looking to solve problems. So my hat's off to you, sir, for that. And hopefully if you look at your calendar and you can be around on the 28th of September and we could talk later, I would love for you to come and talk. There's going to be a lot of great musicians there and a lot of great people there to support that cause. But I think that this is just the beginning of really making us aware that slavery exists in this country in a bigger way than it did when slavery was legal. And we really ought to be working together to eradicate that first and foremost before we start arguing over the same issues that we've been arguing over for the past 50 years that are never really going to get solved, because everybody can agree this is an egregious assault on humanity.
Yeah, if we all work together, we could really have a real serious impact on this problem.
Awesome. Thank you, Congressman Steil, for calling in. Hope to talk to you again in the future. You're welcome anytime here on Get Real with Ralph, anytime especially when you're working on behalf of the people that can't work on behalf of themselves. Thank you very much.